Bloomington Bison finished their most recent hockey season with their first playoff win in franchise history. City leaders say the team also brought in millions of dollars for the local economy. Here's Angela Spampa.
The Bison have only been a franchise for 2 seasons, and although the team lost in the Central Division semifinals, fans still got a chance to enjoy games and everything Bloomington has to offer, with ticket sales doubling this season.
It's a unique and eclectic mix of people who are coming to support the Bison, and that's where the true value is of having a team in the community.
According to Dietmeyer, the city saw approximately $4 million generated during the season. That includes food and beverage sales, arena concessions, merchandise taxes, and hotel and motel stays. Officials say there were about 28,000 unique visitors, more than 120,000 total attendees at Bison games, and the average fan attended 4 times.
About 40% of people are coming from outside of McLean County as they come in, and we see that excitement generating and with return visits from those audiences as well.
According to Manager of Media Relations and Broadcasting for Bloomington Bison, Eric Kowinski, the team is seeing more fans participate in community events hosted by the Bison. He says community partnerships are the backbone of a sustainable sports franchise.
It allows them to, of course, invest in us, but what we hope is their investment is turned around and doubled, tripled, quadrupled, etc., as people see the brands that support something that they love and something that they identify with in the Bloomington Bison.
The team says it partnered with about 40 to 50 community businesses this season, nearly double from last year, helping boost revenue through watch parties and other large events. Kowinski says the team's goal is to continue building community connections through events like jersey auctions, teddy bear tosses, and other fan experiences.
That's one of those things that will just continue to grow sort of strategically in that way, but not worried about the numbers at the end of the day.
In Bloomington, Angela Spampa, 25 News.